You even got a shirt on.
Well, yeah.
I think we're going to lose a lot of people because we had to switch to Sunday, and the marketing went out pretty well, but I don't know if everybody got it. And so we'll maybe even Heather is on the wrong link. Did you try that?
Because I checked I checked um the I don't know, the one in my the one in my Gmail goes to Teams, opens up in Teams. So like I open this up in Teams.
No. We should never be on Teams. We should always be using Zoom, which is what Cyversity. This is Cyversity's link. So I think we may lose quite a few folks.
But at least we're recording it though, so that way we can always go back to it.
Yeah. Well, we have to do a heavy promotion on the recording.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah. Was there some technical difficulties?
Just on my part, that's it.
Oh, no worries. I'm having a fair share of my own today. I'm a bit under the weather, so I know it's just this weekend's not working out for me.
It's I read your note. It's like you got a school bug.
Every year when the kids go back to school, they bring some treasures home.
You can't get Elvis out of the building with all those bugs and stuff that the children bring home. I am elated that I am not there anymore.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
But the experience of raising children, it's just undeniably one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had as a dad with 4 sons and now a granddaughter and a grandson, right? So we only made men over here at the Elcock clan for quite some time, notwithstanding my mother, notwithstanding my mom, but we only made men for quite some time, and then I had all boys. Well, I didn't have any boys. Listen to me, right? I had them, as if that's the case. But no, it's been interesting. So, well, I hope you feel better, Heather. And I got to apologize that we're probably not going to get the amount of people that we even wanted to be here, because I think your story is just overly powerful. It's just incredible. Talk about a sense of determination, persistence, overcoming resistance, and what Stephen Covey said is about highly effective people, how they happen to develop who they are and get to where they are in life. So I think your story is just powerful. So we're going to do a post really heavy marketing on this to make sure that everyone gets a chance to see it.
No worries. For now, I'm happy to spend some time with y'all. And then one of my favorite people in industry is on the line. I see Maria is on the line. Hey, Maria.
Oh yeah, good.
Hello. I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world.
Here's the.
Listen to that accent. That is an awesome accent. I love it.
Thank you for the compliment. I better kind of keep it up because apparently I'm gonna die with this accent. So,
now I
better like it.
Now I'm really jealous.
Plus, having an accent sometimes help. You don't want all the time people to understand what you're saying. They wouldn't think you're so smart.
Listen to that. That's wisdom right there speaking, Carlos. So look, I know some people are going to come and people are going to find their way here, but in the meantime, until they do, I usually have something that I start out with, Heather. It's just really just talking about Cyversity, and we do it every month, right? Because we meet every 4th Monday of the month, every 4th Saturday, every 4th Saturday of the month, and it typically just go through a couple of things, but for those who are going to join us, right? And you said one of your favorite people is on the line, Maria. One of my favorite people is just popped on the line, Eric Pimento, who is a longtime friend, longtime colleague. we owned a couple of businesses together, right? All technology businesses. And Eric is he's the founder and chairman of Links Technology Partners, a company I helped co-found. And he was just on a speaking engagement recently with Ron Guler and another young lady who I can't remember her name, but she's also investors. So they were talking about investments for businesses, small businesses like Austin, Brooklyn, my company, and others. And so Eric is a longtime friend of mine. He's a real partner. So you have your favorite person on the line, one of your favorite people, and I have one of my favorite people.
That's awesome. I love hearing that.
Yeah. So, and look, he's come to support us. We moved to Sunday, Eric. I'm glad you can come. How are you, my friend? And you're on mute.
I'm doing well. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, good. We lost a lot of people because of the switch to Sunday, but you know what? Some of the most important people in the world are here today. And I'm happy, but I typically go through this part and where I talk about what we're going to speak about today. But today we're going to be talking to Heather Gantt-Evans. She's the Chief Information Security Officer from SailPoint. Her story is incredible. And when you guys get an opportunity to hear this recording, as most of you will, because we're going to do a heavy promotion on it, you're going to hear a really profound and positive and powerful story of perseverance and overcoming. But at the end of the day, look at the success that has come out of that. And so, it's a real lesson to others about persistence, overcoming resistance, and getting there no matter what. But in the meantime, I wanted to also bring to everyone's attention the fact that Cyversity, the group that really sponsors this whole interview series, is having a conference in November. The conference is being held in Orlando. Heather, I'm going to talk to you offline about stuff we're doing in Austin that may lead to Orlando. We'll talk about that later, right? I know you're really busy, so I won't burden you too much. But I have to ask if as we say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So take the shot. But anyway, that conference is going to be great. And Heather, I'm going to actually be doing some speaking there too. So, cool. You may find some interest, but I think we'll talk about that later. I'll put the conference link in the chat a little later. So anyone that wants to register should register. And it's going to be one of those scenarios where we're opening back up the door to diversity and inclusion, equity, and belonging, and what that actually means, and how that actually happens, and how it works in conjunction with corporations and individuals that are working their way through. I don't say trying to break in anymore, because saying trying to break in means you don't belong and you're not here. So talking about how those folks are matriculating and navigating their way through the industry to become and get into the space. Just to talk about Cyversity for a minute, the organization has been around for about 6-7 years now. Eric is one of the early adopters to Cyversity. He actually brought me in kicking and screaming like a bandit. I'm not going over there, but I eventually came over. But the organization really works to achieve the consistent representation of women and minorities in cybersecurity. And they do that through programs that are really designed for what we spoke about earlier, which is recruitment, recruitment in inclusion, retention, equity, belonging, and above all things, the development of your career in a industry and a practice and discipline that's really going to be around for quite some time. So a lot of the things that they do that Cyversity does work around support for its members, and that is helping them navigate through the security industry through exploration and career exploration, cyber skills assessments, developing their own individual talents through engage events like the one today, through scholarships, through training, mentorships, and of course the big elephant in the room, networking. It's really the key. When you sent something out, Heather, a lot of your colleagues replied back, yes, this is great, and hopefully they'll show up today. Cyversity is a membership organization. We just started in January with the membership approach, where students pay $20 to invest in themselves, and professionals like Eric and myself and you, Heather, pay, and Carlos, pay $100 to invest in it and for a membership. These are the topic areas that we focus on: career development, career spotlighting, transitioning, leadership, something that you know very well, Heather, and talking about technical attributes of the discipline. We focused over the years on quite a few things: Black History Month, Asian Island Pacific Month, LGBTQ and Pride Month. Next month, we're going to be focusing on Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month, and the speaker is going to be so deep. You're going to love this. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and you can see the other things that we focus on. For the ground rules for everyone that's here, and of course, mute your cameras, mute your background noise so that we can have no interference in the background noise. This usually takes about 60 minutes, and we focus on the things that I've already discussed. There will be a question and answer period. I know I got a lot of questions, right? But we'll see if others join and have questions as well. The survey link for us that are here, I'll put this in the chat a little later, just so you can give your feedback to Cyversity National to let them know how the conversation went, what you'd like to see better, what you'd like to see, period. And of course, develop from there. This week, you can see that this month we're talking to Heather, but next month it's going to be Guillermo Diaz. He happens to be the former senior vice president for Cisco, CIO for Cisco, chairman of High Tech Today. Of course, Danielle from Amazon, and I'm going to be interviewing all of the chapter presidents. We take December off, and then in January we'll start again. And usually we start the year with one of the leadership from Cyversity. We'll be talking to Julian Waits at that time. So let me back up here. In fact, let me stop sharing so that we can get into this. We've got quite a few questions, right? And I've asked, like Eric used to ask me, I backed Carlos into the corner and I said, either you're a man or you're a mouse, which is it? And he began roaring. And so I'm going to move to the side and ask Carlos to go ahead and take over the questioning. And Heather, thank you very much for being here with us. We really, really appreciate this.
Thanks so much,
Carlos.
David. Thank you, David, for that intro. Heather, again, thanks again for spending time with us. We definitely know we'll learn a lot from our conversation today. So we know you have an incredible journey. Can you share with us your personal journey so that way we can learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. I guess starting from the beginning, I grew up in a very small town in Northeast Texas. And I was raised by my grandparents, but spent the weekends with my mother, who was in active addiction for a large portion of my childhood and my adult life. And so, like many people with kind of odds stacked against them and growing up in a small town, I thought kind of getting married and having kids was really the end all be all for a little while, and got engaged to my high school sweetheart and became a teen mom at 19, and quickly found out that it was going to take a lot more to succeed and be in a position to be a provider and offer a life of opportunity for myself and my child. So I ultimately ended up joining the U.S. Army Reserves to help me pay for school. Up until that period, I had actually been a pharmacy technician for 5 years. So I was doing that and trying to work through school. And it was just having my daughter and working full-time and going to school full-time was very overwhelming. And so I woke up one day and I was like, I'm joining the military. They'll pay me to go to school. And so I did. I left for 9 months. That was very difficult to leave my daughter. But in doing so, I got, a large sign-on bonus. I got GI Bill benefits. I got transferable skills, like I was trained as a U.S. Army threat intelligence analyst, and I received a security clearance, right? All of these things were transferable skills that would help set me up for success. And when I got back from the military training, I then was in a better position to focus more exclusively on school while drilling and taking care of my daughter. And for those of you that haven't been in the reserves, drilling is like your monthly duties as a reservist. So, and I did my undergraduate degree in sociology, which is, does not scream cybersecurity. But it was a topic that I found very interesting. Having grown up in a small town, I liked how sociology really taught you that there are very little universal truths, right? And that everybody is living their truths based off of the time and place that they were born, right? And that comes with a certain amount of respect that's owed. And I really loved like being able to view the world in terms of that and the social forces that help shape individual actions. But I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what is it that I want to do? And the drivers for me weren't so much passion as much as practicality, right? I needed to find something that was going to allow me to provide for my daughter and, be able to get out of a situation of endless custody battles and all of that. And so, I did some research and found that, like technology offered a lot of stability. There was a shortage of jobs and, attaining technical skills helps with job security. So I decided to enroll in a master's program at Texas A&M University Commerce that was focused on technology management and management information systems. I got some broad exposure to a variety of different technical concepts like coding and databases and also the management components, like developing business cases and making sure you understand end user audience and requirements and those type of things. So it was a great program, but I was terrified of it. I did not grow up playing with computers. I was much more likely to be baking. So I was really nervous. But before even finishing my master's program, I got offered a full-time position by Booz Allen Hamilton as an IT business analyst supporting the Air Force in a government contract position. And initially I was doing things like collecting functional and technical requirements from end users on the variety of software that the IT organization provided, and then also developing the IT governance model for the CIO. So it was a really great role, and I was there for a little while when Booz Allen came up to me and said, "Hey, we just had this government contracting position open up for a cyber threat intelligence analyst role for Air Force Cyber Command. And you've done all sorts of threat intelligence analysts for the Army, and you've got technology background. So do you think you could figure this out for us?" And I said, "Oh my, okay, well, let me interview for it, and let's get past that first, right?" And I interviewed for the position, and like so many, milestones in your career, it's often yourself taking a leap of faith in you, or another person taking a leap of faith in you. And so this individual saw something in me, decided to take a leap of faith in me. And it was the perfect first cybersecurity position because I was able to just spend all day reading cyber threat reporting, right? And so you're just reading about all the different adversaries, what types of things they're targeting, how they targeted them. And it gave me this broad exposure to all of these different cybersecurity concepts. After a couple of years of doing that, I was really excited to get my hands a little dirtier, right? So I was ready to do more hands-on keyboard stuff. And so at that time, US Cyber Command was standing up what they called cyber protection teams, which were essentially fusion cells doing a variety of offensive and defensive missions. And so I got the opportunity to help with malware analysis, intrusion analysis, planning threat hunting missions, planning defensive offensive missions rather. And so it was really wonderful to sit in all this variety of operational roles and all work together, right, to infuse threat intelligence into the operations. It was fascinating to me. It was about 2014 when I got picked up by E&Y. I was referred by somebody I'd been working with in the Air Force because E&Y at the time was looking to build out a cyber threat intelligence practice. So they were looking to design all of the cyber threat intelligence services they were going to deliver for customers, price them out, staff a team to be able to deliver them, and develop the marketing materials for them. And so I got to do all of that while also being plopped onto my first assignment as a consultant and helping to build out a cyber threat intelligence program for a Fortune 50 manufacturing firm. So that was a lot of interesting experience all at once, from like the thinking through the market demand, building out the marketing materials, building out the team to deliver it, and also at the same time delivering it. So we were like building the ship while we were, we were building the plane while we were flying it, so to speak. And so what I loved ultimately about being at E&Y was you got to get so much experience across so many different industries, so many different Fortune 100s that are paying a premium to solve very, very challenging problems that they do not have the time or resources to solve themselves. So you get so much perspective. So that's the first thing I really loved about it. And the second thing was that you could just raise your hand, right? Like you could say, you know what, I want to take on a project, where we're, instead of just building out cyber threat intelligence program, I'm building out the whole security operations center. Or I want to take on a project where I'm building out cyber exercise programs and helping to deliver those exercises. Or I want to take on a project where I'm getting to work with some of the biggest banks in the world. And so I raised my hands for all of those opportunities, and ultimately went from building out cyber threat intelligence programs to security operations centers, cyber exercise programs, and even cyber resilience programs for some of the biggest banks, where they were really leading the way on thinking through how is it that you can prepare for some of the most devastating cyber triggered business disasters, right? Across all the different important groups, right? Like legal and communications and disaster recovery and business continuity and crisis management and security operations teams, right? So it was so nice to be able to just constantly raise my hand and get to try something new. And the last time I raised my hand there, it was, I want to focus on the whole cybersecurity program and help build out a strategy for a whole cybersecurity organization. And at that time, the CISO at Home Depot had just come on board in January of 2019, and he needed some help wrapping his arms around the maturity of the organization. It's a very large organization. It's a lot to walk into and try to soak up on your own, right? So it ended up turning into a 3-month-long job interview, and I helped assess the strategy and assess the maturity and build out the strategy. And then he offered me a position to lead his security operations and engineering group. I grew that group from 30 people to 150 people while I was there, and ultimately was operating in a deputy CISO capacity. I loved it there, but after about 2 years, I was approached with my first CISO opportunity from an executive recruiter for a CISO role here in Austin, where I was based at the time. And that is, at the time, it was not very common to see a lot of CISO roles here in Austin. And so I let my boss know, hey, I've been approached with this opportunity. He said, Heather, that sounds fantastic. He knew the hiring manager, so he held the hand of the hiring manager for me, and really helped vouch for my experience and capabilities. And I've got my first CISO appointment in 2021. So yeah, February last year. So ultimately I went from analyst to CISO in 10 years in this field, starting with like a very, certainly not an Ivy League background, right? So that's what I love about this field, right? I view it as a great equalizer because of the wealth of opportunity that's available for everybody in it. So yeah.
Thank you. What I really like is how honest you are, because I like how you mentioned that you got into cybersecurity due to the practicality of, and I also like that you mentioned that it's not something that you grew up doing or you weren't super passionate about technology, cybersecurity, because it just shows, your journey just shows that you can, as long as you put in the work, you can have a successful career, that you don't need to you don't have to grow up with messing around with computers, because a lot of us didn't do that.
For
But
sure.
as long as you put in that work, it will pay off. So it being a tough field, were there moments that you wanted to give up? And how
Yeah,
did you make it through it?
for sure. So definitely that my first role in cybersecurity, like I said, I was there to read and do analysis most of the day, but it was still like not a good feeling initially to not have a lot to add to the conversation, right? And I think that that's something anybody deals with when they're new on any job, right? Like, let alone new in a field. It takes a while to get your feet underneath you and get your footing as you learn about the organization or learn about this new role you've taken on. And so it can be very easy to get discouraged during that time period. I think for me, I just had to remind myself that there were people around me that invested in me knowing that, right? And so I just kept my head down, did my research, and I listened a lot, right? And I know it's important to have a voice in the room, but it's also important to know when it's best to listen, right? So I think that was one example. The second is, I was with E&Y for 5 years. And so during that time period, I had 2 little boys and a surgery. And it was very hard traveling and being away from family. And when you are down and can't travel, you feel like you can't contribute to your work family as much, right? And when you're traveling with your work family all the time, they really do feel like a family. So that it was certainly, there were some times where I was traveling and really wasn't sure if I had another week of travel in me, but I just reminded myself that experience and all of that perspective was setting me up for greater success later, right? Because really, like, a year working for a Big Four feels like 5 years of industry experience being compressed into one. And then the last example I would say of like when it got really tough is just big promotions, like going from being a senior manager consultant to being a senior director for Fortune 30 was a big leap. And it took a lot of new tools that I had to rapidly find and sharpen. And then, going from a Fortune 30 senior director with a team of 150 to a CISO role where, last year I inherited a team of 9 people. We grew to 30, but initially it was just 9. So it was like rolling the sleeves back up, digging in with folks, and learning how to scale in a different way. Go from Fortune 30 scale to like smaller business scales. It takes a different level of creativity, and I find that with those big career transitions always came like the toughest moments of imposter syndrome. And so I've always sought help during those time periods. Like, I took a mindfulness-based stress reduction course when I was like within the first year of being senior director at Home Depot, because I needed to better learn how to manage stress to be able to survive that amount of pressure and responsibility. This year I started working with like a coach to help me with like drawing out my own internal wisdom, in it can feel like chaos around you at work when you're responsible for such a broad swath of services, right? And so like having somebody that can help you like draw that wisdom out really helps. So those have been like the hardest points, I think, in my career, and a little bit of like how I've had to frame it to help get over it.
And that's an important point, because we all have to be willing to ask for help. Like you had mentioned before, you have to be willing to listen, and you have to be willing to ask for help if you want to be successful.
For sure. I mean, and sometimes it's as little and silly as like, I've literally called my boss and said, hey, I just need a pep talk today. You know? Like, it's amazing what a pep talk can do. So
Yeah. In your career, how did networking play into your development? I know you mentioned a little bit, but could you go give us go a little bit more in depth?
yeah, I would say what I've noticed is it's varied based off of what stage of my career I'm in. When I was earlier in my career, like before reaching the senior manager level, I think the internal networking was way more important than like the external brand building and external networking. I think sometimes people maybe get it a little backwards or focus a little too heavily on both at the same time, but really you need to make sure your brand where you work is positive, right? You need to make sure you know the people that you need to reach out to within your own organization, and that you're building those relationships, and that you become the person that people really feel like they can call you when they have a challenging situation, right? And like they know that if they ask you to help dive in, that you're going to do a great job knocking it out, right? So like, I think it's really important to build that foundation before you start focusing on a lot of external brand aware, brand building things for yourself. But certainly after like the senior manager level, like doing more of those conferences and more external networking with the local community has been so much more valuable, because the higher up you get in your career, it's like the less people you have internally that do the same thing that you do at your level, right? Yeah. And so you then really need to be networking with people external to your organization to get the perspective for people that are at your level or above, and get the, get their advice. So I don't know, that's at least how it shaped out for me.
Yeah. What are some of like the qualities that you've noticed that you have to have, or that the leaders and champions in this field have to have, and that you have to be successful?
Yeah, I guess I always think about who stood out to me as a leader and champion, right? So that's really that's the perspective that you have, right? Is who created an impact for you. And so sometimes that impact is what not to do, right? And that's a good lesson as well, right? I've been fortunate to work with like 4 really great people for the majority of my career. And it's like the little things that stood out to me. Like I had a partner at E&Y that hand wrote me a note and mailed it to me, right? Like I thought that was just really, really thoughtful. I've had people that would, like when I was at E&Y, I also had a partner that he would travel from city to city, checking on the different groups and teams. And one would not have been surprised or in any way felt slighted if he wasn't making time to do one-on-ones with some of the like individual contributors in that region, right? Like had he just met with managers and senior managers, I think nobody would have really blinked an eye about it. But I remember like he set up a whiteboarding session with me as an individual contributor just to hear my reactions and to brainstorm on some ideas that he had, right? Like he did not need to do that. And I loved that he just made time for my voice, right? Then what's also really stood out to me about great leaders and champions is that they take an interest in you personally, right? Like, you cannot expect to fully understand the ebbs and flows of somebody's performance at work without understanding what they're dealing with on the home front and the personal front. And I think the military does a great job at looking at, individual performance at work as, needing to ensure like overall health of that individual, right? Like we're taught in the military to like, look out for your battle buddy, like understand what they're going through. Like if there's a a weather event, you call them and you make sure that they're doing okay. And what stood out to me about great leaders is like they know if you're going through a hard time, they ask how you're doing, like they remember that you said that you had something coming up and then they'll ask about it later. So like that personal connection is really, really important. And it's even more important in today's like work from home world. And then I would say also like seeking out people who naturally are championing you, right? Like by nature of who they are and how excited they are about the people around them and making sure that they're successful. Are they speaking up for you in rooms that you're not even in, right? And so I like always sought out those people in my career and tried to spend extra time with them. So those are like some of, I don't know if I fully answered your question, but those are like the things that stood out to me about like great leaders and champions. Because when you have those personal connections and you got that sense that somebody cares, you can really be transparent with them about your career goals, and you can really be transparent with them about what you've got going on and get really well-rounded advice.
Yeah, definitely. What made you pick your current role, and why do you like SailPoint?
Yeah, I would say, like mentioned earlier, getting into security was more of a calculation to attain some level of financial stability and opportunities for me and my family. Whereas going to work for a security software provider, specifically SailPoint, was more about focusing on what was important to me. So it was like my opportunity to take a step back and really figure out what it was I wanted out of a work experience. At the time that I came over to SailPoint, there were 4 key drivers. The first was SolarWinds had just happened. And so I was feeling very fired up to go help secure security vendors. All of my colleagues and every customer and person that works for a company is trusting that we can, rely on our security vendors. And I think that we all felt collectively gut punched to see a security vendor get targeted that way. And I've been so proud of like watching, as SolarWinds is another local Austin-based security software provider. They've done such an amazing job with their response. And I was just feeling really fired up to like help go join that fight. I didn't. It was really disappointing to see a vendor get targeted that way. The second reason was like I was looking for security first culture. I had begun to think, like how do I find this like mythical security first culture? Because you have to have some of the foundation in place with the leadership and what the company stands for to be successful in building a security first culture, right? And I thought to myself, if I'm going to find like a really top-notch security first culture, it's going to be at a security vendor. Yeah. And it's because security is core to their business, right? It's core to what they do. And so it's been such a reprieve to come here and like not feel like I'm swimming upstream and trying to get people to swim upstream with me. It's been way more like feeling like everybody was in the outfield with their catcher's mitts on and they're just ready to play ball with us. And that's been like such a nice collaborative working environment to be a part of. The third reason I decided to come over here was because of my boss. He used to be CISO of GE and was with Mandiant. So like, I know that he understands what I do. And I was like, he's going to be really good at balancing the needs of security in the business. And he definitely has been. And then while I was with the Home Depot, I was a SailPoint customer, and while I was with EY, we were SailPoint implementation partners. And I always had like really great working experiences with SailPoint people and products. And so then I like got curious and started looking at their Glassdoor rating, and I was, oh my gosh, well, no wonder they're so great to work with. Like, it seems like they have a really positive place to work. So it was really, for me, coming here was about fine tuning what it is that I wanted out of my career journey, and like feeling like I had the time to take a step back on that.
Thank you. The cloud, you know, it's like the term that we hear all the time. It's, some people don't know what it is. It's new. It's new to a lot of people. Some people have worked, you know, in the cloud for a while. What are some of the dangers that you see in the cloud for practitioners and for customers?
Yeah. So the first and foremost thing that comes to mind is what scares me the most about the cloud is the dual responsibility model, right? And here's the reason why. Have you ever heard that quote that the quickest way to starve a dog is to put two people in charge of feeding it? It's because, you know, like when there's dual responsibility, right, it's so easy for somebody to assume somebody else is doing it, right? And I don't think enough practitioners pay attention to the dual responsibility model that we have with public cloud providers. So that's what scares me the most, because if you're not taking on your part of the responsibility, then there are going to be security control gaps and misconfigurations in the cloud. I guess the next thing that stresses me out about the cloud is just the self-service infrastructure and speed of growth, right? So nowadays you can stand up, you know, workloads in the cloud self-service, and it's pretty decentralized. It's democratized, right? And if you don't have really strong standard images to use to build up those workloads, and if you've not gotten into security as code to help assist in secure self-service infrastructure, then you're going to have a hard time avoiding security drift in the cloud, right? Because like you have so many ephemeral workloads that are spinning up and spinning down all the time, and then the self-service component. You can't just like lay out your perfect security control architecture in the cloud once and you're done, right? It's like you have to really have a lot of built-in best practices to enable that the security control posture not to drift away from the way it was originally intended by security design. So, and the third thing I guess I would highlight is just everything is stitched together by APIs these days to include the cloud. And so I think that's an underserved attack surface at the moment, meaning I don't think security practitioners are paying enough attention to it. You know, APIs, if they're, you know, written insecurely, they're often, you know, reused, you know, so you then are proliferating security misconfigurations very easily through that component as well.
Yeah, an interesting thing is that when you were talking about being a CISO and growing your team, how did you build your team, and then what did you seek, and what are you looking for in your team members?
Yeah, so I always start whether I'm building out a whole cybersecurity program or in, you know, previous roles focusing on specific areas like security operations. I always start by like defining our services, right? Like, what services are we going to offer? And then I build the initial operating model around those defined services, because you can't have role clarity before you have service clarity. And I like to estimate the number of FTEs required to deliver the level of service that we need. But you're never going to be perfect at that initial estimate. And that's why it's important that when you're standing up a team, that you also stand up measures to help you measure demand on those individuals in that service, right? Because you need to be willing to reassess like the capacity requirements of the team. And that's critical for being able to enable work-life balance. So you have to think about that from the beginning. And then, at SailPoint, we use a phrase that we're looking for hungry, humble, and smart people. And I love that. I think that pretty much sums it up. I would just also add that, I'm typically looking for people that have generally stayed with an employer for over 2 years routinely and have had shown their career progression. I'm always looking for diverse candidates, and I'm looking for people that will add to our culture. I think it gets really messy when you're looking for a culture fit, right? Because like, what does that mean? And it can narrow the scope, right? I'm looking for people that can add to our culture in positive ways through a diverse backgrounds and diverse perspectives. So, thinking about it in that term is really important. And we're just now in a place, we tripled last year, like the team tripled in size. And so we're just now at a place where we have enough senior talent to begin focusing on interns and new grads and career transitioners. And it's super important to me to have a team that's excited to invest in the next generation of talent. So that's a phase of the team's overall journey that we're all excited about. And I guess something else that I would just say about how to build a team is like, it's important to remember that when you're recruiting, that they're interviewing you as well. And so like, I think it's very important to spend a lot of time upfront painting the picture of what day-to-day looks like for that role. The context of where we've been as an organization and where we're going and how it applies to that role, because you want to be as transparent as possible up front, right? Like if you need somebody that's got to roll up their sleeves and help build something from the ground up, you need to be careful not to find somebody that prefers maintaining a mature process, right? Because both types of people are very important to the success of an organization. But that's just one example of why it's really important to paint the context of the role when you're building out a team.
Yeah, definitely. How are you able to balance the people's, the process of the technology that you are in charge of?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I so much balance it so much as like prioritize it, right? People first, process second, and then the technology will follow, right? So I think that's really the only way to go about it. And I think that I've largely been successful due to my focus on people, process, and data sharing, right? Ensuring people are working together efficiently and not siloed, ensuring that the people we're working are as happy as can be, and making sure that we have processes in place to ensure quality and ensure that I'm getting the data I need to oversee program health and capacity requirements and all of that, regardless of what technology is in place.
Thank you. What are the tangible, intangible skills that you have to be successful in your current position?
Yeah, I mean, so there are several tangible and intangible skills that are beneficial for anybody in cybersecurity, right? And I'm a firm believer that with the right intangible skills, you can gain the tangible skills, right? So let's talk about the hardest to find intangible skills. Communication skills, specifically like the ability to communicate in a way that does not promote a defensive posture, right? Like people that really know how to come across with humility, right? When we've all ran into those super technical people that just immediately are off-putting with their know-it-all personality, right? So like it's very important to have somebody that communicates in a way that's approachable, and somebody that can communicate in a way that helps translate what we're doing to the business, right? Like those are the two biggest communication skills that are hardest to find. And then being able to manage their time, attention to detail, and critical thinking. These are very difficult to teach. And so like really working on your own to, read books on, time management, read books on, things that are going to make you a better critical thinker, and doing things to help improve your attention to detail. Like these are really good investment areas. So when you have that professor in college that's super specific that notes have to be documented a certain way or whatnot, know that she doesn't really care about the notes. She's trying to teach you attention to detail, which is, one of the biggest sources of frustrations for management these days is having teams that don't have that. And then the hardest to find tangible skills right now, like the most marketable skills, are in cloud security, product security, and then security orchestration, automation, and response engineering. You can find an automation engineer, but having somebody that understands security operations processes, as well as can automate, that's pretty tricky. I think there's some really exciting things happening in the market these days where I think we're seeing a trend of security becoming more accessible in the future, right? Like when we see providers like Torque, for example, they do codeless automation, right? Like if we have more tools that help, we can just bring in somebody that knows like Six Sigma, for example, like knows process improvement and can help automate, like that would be amazing, if, to not have to have coding skills for that. So I'm really excited to see if that's the way the industry goes, because I'd like our industry to continue to get less intimidating.
Yeah. Speaking about that, speaking about the skills, and what's some advice that you would give to somebody starting this journey into cybersecurity, or what's like some advice that you would give if you could go back in time to yourself when you were first starting?
Yeah, one of the things I feel like I did right was like I researched and strategized, right? So there is so much room in the world for people that are born with a life's purpose, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing, but it's also beautiful to endlessly discover new purposes, and it's a beautiful thing to think through, like, how do I achieve my goals, and really set your mind to researching and strategizing how to do that, even if the goals change and evolve, over the course of your life. This has been a difficult lesson for me to appreciate, because like I'm married to a musician who's always been passionate about music, and I felt like a shortcoming in myself, like, oh, I don't have this life's passion, right? Of like, I've always known I wanted to be a musician or something, right? But I think it's really cool that, we have this opportunity to be able to just set new targets and goals for ourselves, and that's equally as purpose driven. So yeah, research and strategize, right? You don't want to embark on a goal without having done your research, and without thinking through the best way to get there. And then second, speak up and reach out, right? So make sure that you're telling the people in a position of influence around you what your goals are. Right. So it's amazing to me how many people don't vocalize their goals to their network, right? How are they going to help you if you just keep networking without telling them what your goals are? Yeah. So tell them and reach out to people who are already where you want to be and ask them what it's like, and I'll try to validate that that's where you want to be, right? So and get their advice. And then the third thing I would just say is pay attention to what your gut is telling you. If you're not at peace with a direction that you're going, you're not going the right direction, right? So there's so many people that have their own goals around us, right? And they're going to try to push you in one direction or another. And that's great. It may line up one day, but if it's not lining up and your gut's telling you this isn't the right move for you, like listen to that. Because when you're on the right path, when you're following the universe's breadcrumbs that they've set out for you, like you're going to feel at peace. You may feel scared, but you're not going to feel like, like that bad gut feeling of like, this may not be the right choice.
Yeah. And that's so important to like, definitely what you talked about earlier was like the research and the strategize, especially with cybersecurity or just technology. It's so big that there's so many different like avenues. If you're like, oh, I just want to get into cybersecurity, you're like, specifically what? Then you can get lost.
Yeah, for sure. It's so important to remember that cybersecurity is a lot like the field of medicine, though, and like you're not expected to be a neurologist and a podiatrist at the same time. In fact, if you were, you'd probably be pretty bad at both. Like, you may be a general practitioner and be a lot wider than you are deep, but that's, nobody's expected to go deep in like 5 different disciplines.
Carlos?
Yeah.
You mind if I jump in for a minute, please?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we've been really on script, Heather, and it's so great that we've been on script because we sort of worked this out before, and I think Carlos is, as one of our mentees that we've worked with, is doing an incredible job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carlos, for stepping up as a mentee to really take the lead here. Serenity, who just joined us, is also a mentee who did the same thing last month with one of our other guests. To go off topic a little bit, the reason we're even here on a Sunday when we typically are meeting on a Saturday is because of this work life and family balance that you're engaged and involved in. And you just mentioned that your husband is an artist, and my son is an artist. I think I might have mentioned that to you. My son is an artist right here in Austin too. How do you work through? Yeah, we're going to talk about that because that's what we need to talk about, right? How do you handle in some measure in depth how you, as a security practitioner, really somewhat rigid guardrails that you operate in, and your husband is in a esoteric environment, really, and right? And so I think I know the balance between the two, but I want to hear how you do it, because we're even here on a Sunday because of family scenarios that pop up, and we got here on a Sunday. So please help share some of that with us, please.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm blessed to have a husband who is at home during the day, because musician works oftentimes a lot of nights and weekends, right? And so he certainly helps out with balancing a lot of the things on the home front, like getting kids to and from school and everything. But the kids go to 2 different schools, and there's extracurriculars going on, and it's important to define kind of that sacred time, right? So on weekends, my family gets my time first, right? And so that, to your point, that's why we're here today instead of the plan yesterday. I think that there are, one of the things our CEO talks about at SailPoint is like the concept of healthy temporary imbalance, right? Sometimes you're going to have a temporary imbalance that is healthy because it's helping you to achieve a goal or to be able to take advantage of an opportunity to shine and rise to the occasion, right? And you're chipping in and pulling the sleeves up with your teammates during a surge period, maybe you're going through an audit or whatever, right? That's a temporary healthy imbalance, right? It is so important to set a date in your head as to when you're going to transition out of that pace. Because if you're not purposeful about doing that, it will become a permanent unhealthy imbalance. And I've learned that it's about being mindful of setting those dates, of when to slow down. And it's a lot about calendar management, which I'm a little type A about at this point. But I didn't get that way until probably 3 years ago. I was forced into a situation where I really had to start adopting rigorous time blocking techniques for my calendar to ensure that I had time to do everything that I needed to do, and that I was not constantly in a state of unhealthy imbalance.
I'm glad that we were able to fit ourselves into your calendar. We planned this out ahead of time so that we could be here. Carlos, are you okay with taking a couple of questions from the audience? I know we've got
Yeah,
Maria
definitely.
and Serenity and Eric, and he's posted a couple of questions. You mind?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone, how long or how many years was the journey from the boot camp to the boost cyber position?
Okay, yeah. So I went to boot camp in 2008. No, 2009. Around that time frame. I think I entered in 2008 November and came out in the summer of 2009. And then in 2011, I got my first position with Booz Allen. So during that time period, I finished my bachelor's and got all but one semester of my graduate degree done. And I finished my last semester of graduate school in San Antonio, away from my family, with my daughter and a full-time job. That was another time I had to seek help. Definitely had some prescription help for that time period.
You were busy. That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it was, we used the after school program, and I dropped her off of school and picked her up, and I worked with my professors on moving my last semester to virtual. Once again, communicate your goals, right? You never know how somebody can help you.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's so important to like people shouldn't feel like ashamed to like ask for help. Like take a look at your like own situation, like ask for help, reach out, and like that's the only way we can be successful and helping out other people too.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. How do you? Oh, sorry,
No,
David.
Carlos, you go. No, Carlos, you
Yeah, I was gonna say, Eric also asked a really good question. He's like, how do you see the CISO role evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm much of a visionary, and that I don't feel like that I can tell the future. But what the trends that I see right now are that we're asking a lot of CISOs. I see in some of the bigger organizations sometimes up to like 6 deputies, right? And I see, we're in a situation now where it's like, in many industries, not just security vendor side of the house, but technology and automotive, CISOs often asked to help reassure customers, right? Like reassure the market and external, stakeholders that, we're securing the product that we're delivering, right? Whether it's software, or vehicles or, machinery or whatnot. And so that's an interesting evolution of the role that it competes with the time of the CISO to also be doing all the other things that they're asked to do, which, communicate upward to the senior executive team and the board on the current risk posture and health of the program and the priorities, while also, managing down the team, ensuring that we're executing and overseeing execution, and that you're guiding and mentoring and developing the team, and then also the external networking, making sure you have good peer relationships internal to the organization and outside of the organization. We see CISOs growing up from so many different paths, right? We've seen CISOs that grew up in software development. We've seen CISOs that grew up in security architecture and engineering, and maybe they were a master cloud architect, right? We've seen CISOs that grew up in GRC and maybe were a little bit more generalist and broad, and then CISOs like myself that grew up in security operations. And so organizations, I think also need to in future think about like what type of CISO do they need? And because you're not going to get all of that in one person, right?
Yeah.
And you may need one type of CISO for one phase of your journey and a different type of CISO for a different phase. And like I said, in some instances, we're seeing more organizations, formally deputize a significant number of people to help manage the CISO role because it's getting so vast that it's growing to that point where it's almost bigger than one person's job. So that's something I see. I also see, especially in technology, more CISOs taking on IT. 3 of my peers, recently told me that they've taken on IT. I think that's an interesting evolution, and I'm interested to see how that continues to progress. The role of the CIO and the CISO and the CTO, those dynamics are changing, right? Based off of the way that the technology is changing, right? More and more we're seeing the CTO own the cloud, and more the CIO role is shrinking because of the cloud, right? And so and I don't just mean public cloud like SaaS, right? SaaS and public cloud is very democratized, right? There's admins and there's people who can spin up infrastructure. There's admins for SaaS and people who can spin up infrastructure for the cloud all over the business, right? And so it's making that scope for the CIO change, and it's to be determined what that's going to mean for the dynamics of those 3 seats, the CIO and the CTO and the CISO.
Absolutely. Heather, you seem to have, I sense a seek to understand before seeking to be understood sort of. I think the word is idiom with you. You just seem to just grab it, listen to it, shift it, sift it, and then respond, not react, but respond to it. Where does that come from in you personally? Where did that come from? Because it's not, sometimes it's not born with, it's designed and developed.
Yeah, I've only just recently started to realize through working with my coach that people's brains all work so differently. And I don't know exactly where that developed so much as I think anybody that's had an experience where they got out over their skis, or they took a harder stance than their boss was willing to take, or these are not pleasant situations to be in, right? It's really important to make sure you understand before you do step on somebody's toes in some way. And so if I were to gain the source of that, it's empathy, right? Growing up with some difficult home life circumstances, I learned very quickly to understand the emotional state of the people around me, right? So that I could better navigate it. And I think that, seeking to understand people's feelings on a topic, seeking to understand how you might impact their feelings once you speak up, it makes you a more careful, calculated person and how it is you approach any situation.
Sorry, I was just talking on mute. Maria, Serenity, and of course, Eric, do you guys want to come off mute before Carlos goes back on schedule? Before he goes back? Anyone of you want to come off mute and make a comment or ask a question directly? I see that there's.
I do. I first and foremost got to say, what an amazing story, Heather. I mean, just absolutely amazing, and I don't use those words lightly. I can relate to some of the early beginnings of your story as well, and I can certainly appreciate where you're at in your journey. Thank you for sharing the story. My question for you, and Maria was kind enough to chime in and validate what I immediately gravitated to. You're clearly an amazing role model. Super amazing story. What are some of the ways that you pay it forward besides sharing that lovely journey with us today, right? How do you pay it forward and work with other folks so that they can kind of experience a similar experience?
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything grandiose that I do, but what I do is anyone that reaches out for a mentorship discussion or a career discussion on LinkedIn, on email, and I always respond. I make time for that person. And I think just in how I go about my day to day, it's so important to me to make sure people feel included. And so you know, I one of the things that I learned growing up in the place that I grew up is that one, I went from being homeschooled to going to a public school, and it was very stark difference, and I did not feel included. I hate when people feel that way. I think like seeking out the quiet voice in the room is like something so profound and powerful that you can do to help give back, right? Because if you've ever experienced what it's like to be the quiet voice in the room, then you know that when somebody asks for your opinion, it means the world to you, right? And gives you that chance to speak up. And so they aren't like big, profound things that I do, like from a charitable giving perspective. Like my passion is the diaper bank, like I really, because I've known what it's like to be a poor single mom, right? So, but as it pertains to my community, within cybersecurity, I just make myself available, and I really try to bring out all the voices in the room.
Please do not underestimate that in any way, shape, or form. I can tell you firsthand, one of my most influential relationships in business started out over a simple email thread that went about 13 years long.
Oh, I love that.
13 years long. Never had a phone call, never ran into one another in the same situation. Eventually, we ended up meeting out at RSA. We knew exactly who one another were, and it was like we picked up right off of the email thread. So don't underestimate just being responsive, and thank you for being so.
That story makes me so happy, Eric. Thank you for sharing.
Indeed.
So I wanted to approach it from a different perspective. From time to time, I talk to Heather, and she always have time for me, and I do feel appreciated. So that's she's not just saying it; she actually does it. But and always, the story that she shared with us is very profound. There are other people with a lot of good stories, but one thing unique that I really enjoyed today was the way she shared the story with us. And so my kind of a follow-up question to her is going to be, how can you make it to be so personable, and at the same time you have some of those very hard topics, sometimes scrutinized, sometimes painful, sometimes, but you still have the time, the tenacity to keep it personal and to kind of lead it this way?
Yeah, I struggled with this topic, Maria, because, I never really know where the line is between oversharing and, to me, like that you hear professionals talk about that. Like people at work don't need to know every little detail. I don't think about it in that terms. I just speak my truth at the moment, right? And I think that that's the only way you can be authentic, right? Is by speaking your truth. And this year has been a particularly difficult year for me to keep things tidy and compartmentalized between personal life and work life. I had my brother committed suicide earlier this year, and it's been one of those situations where it was deeply impacting my how I showed up to work, right? Bereavement's not like a 2-week tidy process, right? And it's not something you can draw a straight line to. So point being, like, I just have to live my truth. I have to tell people what's going on, because otherwise, as a leader, if I show up and I'm like got low energy that day, if they don't know that I'm having a particularly griefy day, like, they can take it personal, right? And I've dealt with pain management battles, and I've had to say, look, guys, I'm having a bad pain management day, and I'm letting you know so you don't view my low energy as a reflection of how excited I am to be here with you today, right? And so I think that just like that willingness to be transparent about what it is you've gone through and are going through, it signals to people that it's okay for them to go through it too, right? And it signals to them that they can make it through it. And like, I don't see the purpose in hiding that to maintain a tidy professional appearance.
Yeah, thank you very much, and my sincere condolences for your brother. I know how hard it is. My husband committed suicide about 3 years ago, so I know how can it impact you.
I didn't even know we had that in common until today. And so my heart goes out to you as well, Maria.
Thank you.
I have no words for what you both shared. It's just so heart rendering. And so I have no words for that. I have a question, but Serenity, please, you go first. Goodness.
Yeah, my
Thank you for
condolences to
sharing.
both of you, Heather and Maria.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just like so struck by, yeah, this is so profound how you're just so vulnerable, like talking to us, and that's very inspiring, because I know it takes a lot of strength and resilience to be a CISO, we've been hearing. So, and thank you for your question too, Maria. I was wondering the same thing.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your feedback and being here. And I think the more we can share with each other, the stronger we'll all become.
Incredible. Serenity, did you have a question?
Sure. Yeah, I was wondering what inspired you to decide to even want to be a CISO. Like, how did you find that path? There, like you said, there's just so many different paths in cybersecurity. Like, I don't know. Like, did it just come about gradually? Like, what made you determine that you definitely wanted to do this and not something else? Like, you were talking about other people having different ideas.
Yeah, I wish I could say, as much as I tout researching and strategizing, I did not strategize towards this role. I never would have told myself this was an achievable goal. But what I did do is I surrounded myself with people who believed in me, that told me, hey, you would make a great CISO one day. And so it was literally those people around me that, kept saying, hey, I think you'd be good for this. I think you would be great at senior manager. I think they were the ones that you can put yourself around people that will limit your views or will expand your views, right? And so I think that by surrounding myself with people that helped me to have a bigger view for my own potential is what got me here. And I'm still deciding what it is that I want to do when I grow up, right? Because I'll do this for a little while, and then maybe our industry is like this microcosm of karma, right? So like every little kind actor giving back, or elevating a voice in the room, or being responsive, has always come back to me tenfold in ways I never expected several years later. And so I'm fully expecting that will happen, for my next move. And I'm at a point in my career where I can just say, does this feel right? and I'm past that survival period, right? Because we're initially getting into a career, we need to, gain some financial stability. We need to be able to get to a point where we can take care of ourselves and the people we love, right? And I'm just realizing that I'm at this place in my career now where I can let that good karma come back to me. I can continue to pour out into the world and then just see what happens and what feels right.
Yeah, that's great. I also love that Eric asked you about, paying it forward and mentorship too. So that really ties into that. And David is my wonderful mentor. He's been encouraging me, and same thing, like sees more in me than I see in myself sometimes. So it's wonderful.
It's so important.
Yeah. I was wondering about your opinion about these CISOs. Like, do you think that that's a viable trend? Like, what do you think about that? Have you ever considered that, like, as a self-employment option?
Yeah, I think definitely I'm seeing more vCISO work out there. There's always going to be companies where it's not the right time in their company journey yet to have a full-time CISO, right? You don't start a business and day one have a full-fledged cybersecurity program, right? That's never how it works. Once prior to it being time to have a virtual or to have a full-time CISO, you're going to have questions about the security implications of the business decisions and the technology decisions you're making. And so having vCISOs that you can reach out to is so important. And then when it is time to bring on a CISO, it can be great to have virtual CISOs to help you best set that person up for success, right? Find the right fit, like find the right organizational structure, inaugural budget, or but help estimate what it's going to take to be able to set up a CISO for success. So I do think it's a viable career option. It's something that I've thought about because one of my favorite folks in industry, he's done a lot of bouncing between CISO jobs to consulting jobs, to include virtual CISO jobs. And he said that it helped him be a better consultant and a better CISO every time, right? Because when you become a consultant, you're getting all that wide exposure and perspective, right? And then when you go back to the seat and you're sitting as a CISO, as an organization, you bring back that perspective, right? And you're gaining new, like, in the weeds, in the trenches type perspective that you can bring back to consulting. And so it's something I've definitely considered. I've often thought, wow, I'd be such a better consultant now, after having sat in the practitioner seat for so long. So I'm open to it.
That's great. Yeah, once again, I just want to say, like, how inspiring it is to, I apologize, work has been really busy. I'm actually working today, like right now, but but from what I've heard of your story and what David has told me about your story, I'm very, very inspired. So I will definitely have to watch the first half and learn more about your story. But thank you so much for coming and sharing with us your story and all of your wonderful advice. I really, really enjoyed hearing it.
Thank you so much, Serenity. I really appreciate it. I hope you get some you time soon as work simmers down a little.
Absolutely.
Well, one more question, Dave. One more question.
Sir. Yes, sir.
As a CISO, what do you see as one of the key industry disruptions that you anticipate over the next 5 years? What's going to disrupt the industry from your perspective?
I think that the biggest disruptors right now are happening like at the SEC level, right? Thinking about things like the proposed SEC guidelines to mandate cybersecurity subject matter experts on boards, right? Or when we see trends about like really nailing down the best practice on where CISOs report into, right? Or ensuring more senior executive and board education on cybersecurity. These are the things that I think are going to really enable our industry and disrupt it in a positive way, right? Because as we're able to build out more security first cultures out there, we're going to be able to accomplish so much more. And that means ultimately protecting our businesses and customers so much better.
Indeed. All right, last one. Follow on, Heather. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Last one.
No worries.
Where do you see the connection between enterprise risk management and ESG? Your social, your
We're going in that direction, Eric, for sure.
I'm
That's-
curious, and I'm curious because she has such a human approach, right, to engaging in doing security. So I am curious to see how she's seeing the correlation between the way you're managing risk internally and the way in which your organization manages risk and their responsibilities to the overall society.
Yeah, I view the connective tissue there as resilience, right? So I think that we need to focus more heavily on resilience and the if not when kind of adage, and being prepared to enable a really, really responsible response effort, right? And that's like the make or break thing about whether or not you're resilient as a company when it comes to a cyber triggered business disaster is your communication to your customers and your stakeholders and your employees and the government agencies involved. And so that's all things we can prepare for, right? We need to, it's the security controls are still important, but the security controls will fail. And so we need to be more prepared to have a more responsive and transparent and ethical communication response to when things do go bad.
Not have said it better. Thank you for that, Heather.
Yeah, thank you for great questions, Eric.
That almost sounds like what we just saw with LastPass, who had gotten hacked a little bit on the 23rd, it was. And by the 25th, they were out talking about it. And that's the kind of responsibility that a corporation, I mean, all of us to some degree lose LastPass in some way, shape, or form or another. And they were so transparent. You know, this is a Cyversity sort of sponsored event interview series that we always talk about the measures and metrics of diversity in cybersecurity, right? It's a real big sort of topic, at least for us, because, well, we're all diverse. Look at this, look at the group of people here today, right? This is a diverse group, and this is always the type of group that we have here. And some of the questions that, you know, Carlos is probably going to jump into. Carlos, I'm going to let you ask you to go back in there, please, and go back to some of our questions. I always wonder, especially in my profession, what's the responsibility between corporations playing a role in the development of next generation talent and, you know, and practitioners? What's they're benefiting, and I don't mean SailPoint necessarily, I'm not talking they benefit from the development of this next generation talent, but how do they play a role in creating and developing that talent?
Yeah, I mean, it varies so drastically from company to company, but I think there's a couple of ways that we all need to be doing this, right? The first is, and this is an area that I really want to focus on, is we've got to make our position descriptions more accessible and approachable, right? Like we have got to stop writing like the unicorn position description and really focusing on the fact that we want people of all backgrounds to apply. Like I said, I have a sociology undergrad. I've worked with people that career transitioned out of the medical field or out of military doing something totally different, or, you know, you name it. And there's so much need in this field that there is home for everybody, right? It's just about making those people feel like they can approach to even apply, right? So I want to get better at that. And then we have to put it into our team growth plan, how it is we want to give back to the next generation, right? Like we need to plan internships, we need to plan junior level roles, right? We need to be able to identify, you know, career transitioners and new graduates that can fill those junior roles. So I think that's very important. And then from the giving back component, you know, at SailPoint, we have our own organizations that we've leveraged to give back in. But one of the things that I've loved seeing is just individuals on my team feel empowered to say, like we designed a hoodie for our team with our team logo, and we had a team member say, can we put proceeds towards Black Girls Code? And I was like, that I love that my team feels empowered to speak up and about what their passion is and what opportunities that they see, because no one leader is going to know everything, right? We need to make sure we have an environment on the team where people can give back in the ways that are meaningful to them. Then just helping to connect your team with the giving back opportunities that you know your company is already sponsoring.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. One last question, because we talked about it. How can like any of us, or what are steps that you recommend when we're trying to reach out to somebody, to like a CISO or like a role model, and what are those like questions, or how can we better do it?
Yeah, I really have one piece of advice that I want to drill home for this one, and that's be specific in your ask. I have people that reach out to me on LinkedIn and they're like, hey, just wanting to network. What does that mean to you, right? So like be specific. Hey, I've got a big career transition coming up. I'm about to graduate. I'm about to have a promotion opportunity at work. Can we discuss this, right? Can we have a career discussion? Can we have a mentorship discussion? Be specific on what you're hoping to get out of a mentor. Like, how frequently do you want to meet? What goals are you wanting to tackle with that mentorship? And what specifically about that mentor help drive those goals, right? Because you need to make sure that you're matching your goals to people who are best positioned to help you reach them, right? So just be specific, right? And be bold to ask specifically what you want and need.
Definitely, thank you. David, how are we on time?
We are literally at time. There's probably so much more to cover, but we're at time. And so as typical, Heather, when we close out these conversations, we first of all really reach back to and say in the most sincere way that we thank you. And we're so grateful. Really, and I can go on. I'm a minister's kid, so I can get too deep into that kind of stuff. But I really appreciate your candor, right? That's one of the reasons I reach out to you, because I said this is really real stuff, not that ish that you hear. And so really, and so we really thank you for the time. I'm going to be posting this discussion as widely as I can. Anywhere you can jump in and just say, hey, look, listen to this discussion because it matters. Cyversity matters. You matter. The folks that were here matter. And let's see if we can create some more buzz around this, because we'll probably do it again. But at the time that we do it again, we hope there are more people who can be in the room at the same time. Carlos, I got to say to you, man, I might have just asked you abruptly to do something, but the measure of you taking the task to hand and doing the job that you did speaks very loudly and boldly and ferociously to what you are capable of doing. It's just beyond the pale. And of course, Serenity, you and all of our mentees, because we have a group called the Hustlers. You see it back there? Wait.
I love it.
And it's hustling to hustle to be you.
Yeah.
So they want them to be you at the end of the day. And Serenity and so many others are part of that. Maria, man, thank you for coming. You really helped round out our vision of Heather, because I mean, this is a byproduct of Heather. You are a byproduct of her engagement. And so I'm just profoundly thankful. And I know this sounds stupid, and it may sound stupid to you, Heather, because everybody's saying how freaking great you are. You hear that crap a lot. And so I just think I'm really struck by you. And that's not often the case with everyone. It's not.
Thank you. Well, you might think so, but I mean, this seat can be really lonely. And so it's it's these types of engagements that really make me feel like I have a community. And so I thank you all for hearing my story and for asking such meaningful questions. And if you ever need to reach out for anything, I am here.
Well, I'm gonna reach out so me, you, and your husband and my lady can go see you, go see your husband play, and come see my son play. Just
That
have
sounds
some
awesome.
fun. You know, we're gonna do some
Just
stuff.
send me the dates, Dave. Send me the dates.
Oh, you know it, Eric. You know it, Eric. You know that's my. Excuse me. That's my man. 50 grand right there.
Indeed. I do have to run. Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thank
Hey,
you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank.
Bye.
Bye,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Heather.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, David.
Yes,
Thank you,
for coming.
Carlos. Yeah.
See
All
you
right,
guys.
bye, y'all.
Bye.